Hey, good morning, folks. We're here with Mr. Ezzard Miller, representative for the District of Northside. He's going to have a chat with us. I know some weeks ago we were discussing some proposed changes to the health practice and
Amendment and validation.
amendment and validation bill. Has got quite a name there, 2020, where the government, the Minister of Health, the Honorable Dwayne Seymour, was making some recommendations for changing that particular law. Now, there were some portions of that that were extremely controversial. Mr. Miller spoke about those controversial aspects in his debate in the Legislative Assembly. I got to listen to some of that. I must say, not the entire thing, Mr. Miller, because to be honest, it was quite lengthy, but
Yeah.
you took the time to actually do substantial research. And of course, you have a history with this particular bill and that you had objections years ago. So let's just back up a little bit to give people a bit of historical context to put this in. The changes that now are coming about are a direct result of something that happened back in 2013. Essentially, when Health City came on board, there were some proposals to allow their physicians to come in to have a different standard, essentially, of registration. So just again, recap for us what that means.
What happened in 2013 was the government of the day took the political expedient way to solve the problem of the Cayman Islands registration process, not accepting certifications from India, right? And they created what's called institutional registrations, which confines the person to the institution that applied for their registration in the first place. Now, I raised concerns at that time because I didn't think that was necessary. We had employed good doctors from India in the health services before who went through the front door, met all the regulatory requirements, and were very successful. So I objected to creating a second standard of registering not just doctors now, all healthcare professionals, right? At that time. And one of the things that I managed to get them to do in 2013 was to put a cap on it so that if you got institutional registrations, it could only be renewed twice. So you could not be in Cayman for any longer than 6 years, which then did not allow you to stay long enough to qualify to apply for PR and come out then and compete against all Caymanians who have gone through the more rigorous process of getting registration.
Right. So let's just break it down then. So institutional registration, essentially what you're saying is those persons from India don't have the standard of qualification that people who've been trained elsewhere in the world, including Jamaica, the UK, Australia, all the other sort of larger countries.
Right.
They don't have the same stringent requirements. So an exception was made in the case of, is Health City the only registered institutional? Yes. Okay, so basically this impacts only Health City.
Right, yeah.
So their physicians are allowed to come in. Once they're institutionally registered, they can only work for Health City.
Right.
So they don't have the necessary qualifications to be working anywhere else, basically.
Right.
Okay. Now, that exemption was made to accommodate the Health City project in 2013. Your recommendation at the time, which was actually implemented, is that there's a cap. So they did an initial registration and then 2 periods of renewal of 2 years.
Right.
So total of 6 years, and then they leave and they're gone, and that's it.
And they bring other ones or whatever they want to do.
And it includes all of the support staff, which I didn't know. I thought it was just the physicians.
No, it's all healthcare professionals.
Okay.
That's what people need to understand.
So
This refers to lab technicians, practical nurses, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
Right? So that was my big concern was how do we prevent these people from competing against Caymanians who go and get qualified through our more rigorous system that we had. Because basically what they do with this institutional registration is once you qualify from a medical school in India that is listed in a book that they identify, they accept the registration. Now prior to that is the people from India had to go through one of the recognized countries that we listed in our laws that we accepted registration from, right? Or they could go to Jamaica and do what's known as the CAMC examination, right? And be able to be registered under that. Now, I had two reasons to object to this. One was the long-term effect of to compete with Caymanians. And because I always believed that these doctors were smart enough and good enough to have qualified through the regular process.
Right.
But again, why would we want to bring good healthcare professionals here who basically could be treated as slaves?
Right.
Because you can't work for nobody else, right?
Yes.
So you couldn't come out and benefit from the Cayman economy and get compensated for your services, right? And why should we do that to good people, you know?
Right.
But then they kept them from, after I couldn't get the registration process, then I fought to get this cap put on so that we wouldn't have this mass exodus of people in 9 or 10 years. And then what are we going to do with these people? Because they won't have institutional registration, but they're now Caymanians. So we will have two sets of Caymanians qualified under different requirements, right? To practice, and that just doesn't make any sense.
Yes. Okay. So that is quite interesting. So they did it with the cap in place, and now some years later, the minister is proposing removing the cap amongst other things.
Because what happened is 6 years was up last year.
Right.
Because it started in 2013, right?
Yes.
So one or two things has happened, which the minister refused to acknowledge what they were trying to fix, which was my question during my debate. Did the government renew licensures ultra virus of the law beyond the second renewal, or did they allow people to practice without a license?
Right. Because the 6-year mark has already passed.
Yeah.
So between that 6-year mark passing last year and now, how are these physicians legally operating, or all the medical professionals at Health City, how are they legally operating?
Right.
That's the question.
That's the question.
Yeah.
No.
And so the minister has not answered that question.
No, but here's what they did. They were giving them full immunity. And when I talk about immunity now, I mean immunity from everything. Let me quote what the immunity clause says. 9.1. Notwithstanding any law to the contrary, no legal proceedings or other action of any kind shall be commenced or continued against any person in respect of a consequence of an act, decision, omission, or proceeding of an institutional registered practitioner done, taken, made, or conducted during the specific period. So I objected to that, and they changed it, right? Because they
So was that exemption looking to just address the lapse in time from when they may have not been technically registered, or what was
listen
that?
to me. If